Hi everyone, I hope that you can hear me. My name's Gemma Robbins. I'm the Regional Arts WA Network Coordinator here, and I worked with this team to coordinate the panel. So we've got the panelists pinned at the moment, and you guys are all up the top. We do encourage you to keep your cameras on, so so we have that feel of being in the room together. But I do need to let you know that we are recording this because we will be putting it online so others can watch it later. So if you're not comfortable, then I understand if you want to keep your webcams hidden. Another little bit of housekeeping is that if you're having trouble hearing, there is a function on Zoom which you go to more and there's captions. So there is live captions. I'm not sure how accurate they'll be, but they could assist you if you're having trouble with the hearing. And also there is the chat function. So at any time, if there's any problem or if you've got a question, please put it in there and I'll monitor that while we have this conversation. I've just let a few more people in and then we can get started. Oh, hello everyone. Hi. Okay, so I'm just going to welcome everyone here today and acknowledge that I'm on Whadjuk Noongar country and we're all sitting on different countries across the state. And, there's some people across the eastern states joining us. And Pilar just yesterday was saying that Regional Arts WA has updated their acknowledgement of country in the annual report. And I said, oh no, I normally like to just, say what's on my mind at the time, which is, and, of course, Pilar said, of course, but then I read it and I thought, this is really beautiful. So actually, I'm going to read it now that we've updated it. So Regional Arts WA honours and respects the traditional custodians of the land in which we gather and operate, acknowledging their enduring connection to country, culture, and spirituality. We recognise the resilience and strength of the First Nations peoples, their rich cultural heritage, and the ongoing importance of their knowledge and practices. We are committed to fostering cultural equity and understanding with the First Nations people across WA. So I will now hand over to our CEO, Dr. Pilar Kasat, who will be facilitating the conversation with the Shorebird, some of the creators from the Shorebird Quest. So thank you. And over to you, Pilar.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. It's real great to see you all on the screen. I would love it if we were all in a room, but this is as good as it gets, and that means that more people can participate. Thanks, Gemma, for the introduction, and we're ready to go. So I will introduce the panel really briefly, and then we'll proceed to several questions, and then we'll have time for you to ask lots of questions. First of all, I wanna invite us to leave the stuff that we're doing in our days just outside for a moment. So what I want us to do is to just land here and try to create a bit of intimacy with this, mediated by this screen. So if I can ask everyone just to take a big breath in. And just, get comfortable, put your feet on the ground, whatever ground you're on at the moment, and just, make sure you feel where you're seated. Just make contact with that chair. Thanks, Gwen. I love that roll. And just take another deep breath. Here we are. We're going to create a bit of space to share some ideas and thoughts about a pretty magnificent project. We are really lucky to have the creators and 4 of them in the room, and there are more, right? So there are more creators that participated in the project in this space here today, but we have 4 representatives that will be speaking more directly to the project. Projects like this don't happen without an enormous effort, and I am already, if you had the chance to see the video, can I get a bit of a show of hands? And those of you are muted at the moment, if you could somehow let us know, maybe with a little hand, whether you had the opportunity to watch the video. Yes, I did. I'm not, can you tell us if you had the chance to watch the video? Great, hands are getting up, some. Now, a lot haven't. So I'm going to ask Gemma. I think it's so important that we get a grounding on this project, that I think it's really worthwhile spending 5 minutes together and watching the promo video. Because if you haven't, I don't think you're going to get as much from the conversation that if you would if you had the chance. So if everyone, those of you who already watch it, if you can indulge us for 5 minutes to watch it again together, that would be wonderful. So, Gemma, before you press play, I wanted to ask our panelists, before we show the video, just one word, and that is for Meredith, Bernadette, Jamie, and Ed. Can you give me one word that explains or tell us what this project meant to you in one word? Meredith.
One word, expansive.
Expansive, thank you. And we'll leave it there. Bernadette.
Airborne.
Airborne. Great. Okay, just get those words and, you know, listen, hear them. So expansive, airborne. Jamie.
Oh. Let's say, well, obvious one, collaborative.
Say that again, collaborative.
Collaboration.
Thank you, thank you. And Ed?
Connecting.
Connecting. Beautiful. So there you go, 4 words. Now we will watch this 5 minutes. That is as a bit of a snapshot of this project. Thank you, Gemma. You can press play. I'm not getting sound across. Maybe because you're muted. No.
It shouldn't be because I'm muted. Let me try. Can you hear it now? All
No.
right. Make my audio. Just a moment. I wonder if one of my colleagues knows how to make the...
That's a hard one to put you on the spot, Gemma, that way. So maybe let the visuals keep moving whilst maybe...
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, so we get...
You ready?
Jamie sings.
Yeah, you ready?
Yeah.
Praise I'm a polykeeper. We may never meet, the dawn. I stay real discreet in the mud beneath your feet. Some of us are eaten by shorebirds, that is true. Baby, don't you eat the green ones? They taste like slimy spew. Well, it ain't great crud, it's all about the mud, the benthic boogie. Ooh, hey, the benthic boogie. There, the benthic boogie. Down, 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 the benthic boogie. Oh, woo, woo, the benthic boogie. Down and down, well, it ain't great crud, it's all about the mud, the benthic boogie. Say it again, wait, crud, it's all about the mud.
With your feels, get your feel, eat 'em whole, swallow 'em down, and in your belly, turn 'em around. Well, it ain't great crud, it's all about the mud, the benthic boogie, the benthic boogie, the benthic boogie, the benthic boogie. The benthic boogie. Well, it ain't great crud, it's all about the mud, the benthic boogie.
I'm Curtis the Curlew. Something I like to do is crabbing, yes, it's true. I hear like crabbing too. I don't need a giant hook, 'cause I got my giant face down burrows in the mud. I probe it on the chase. It looks funny, yes it's true, but it's very useful too. The benthic boogie, no, 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 the benthic boogie, the benthic boogie, the benthic boogie, the benthic boogie. Well, it ain't great crud, it's all about the mud, the benthic boogie. On the fast, on the fast, on the fast, on the fast. When it's time to migrate, I've got to put on some weight, 'cause I got a date, and in the Arctic you can't be late. So I go to my favorite crab hole and I probe my bill inside. Got to get your fill now, look out, here comes the tide. Well, it ain't great crud, it's all about the mud, the benthic boogie, the benthic boogie, the benthic boogie, the benthic boogie, the benthic boogie. Well, it ain't great crud, it's all about the mud, the benthic boogie. No, no, no. Well, it ain't great crud, it's all about the mud, the benthic boogie. No, no, no. Well, it ain't great crud, it's all about the mud. The benthic boogie.
Thank you. Jamie, thanks so much for that incredible save and to be able to sing. That's amazing. Thank you. That I hope that was really grounding, and now we can, now we know what we're talking about. It's my great pleasure to introduce you to Meredith Bell. Meredith is the Theatre Kimberley Artistic Director and was the Artistic Director of this production. Bernadette Trench Tiedemann. Bernadette is the co-director, co-writer and lead puppetry artist in the production. Jamie Jacket, we've got no doubt, who was the artistic musical director of the production and co-composer. And Ed Ma. Ed is the puppet co-writer, puppet maker and performer. And Ed lives as the artist of Yawuru, Yawa Yawa, Bari Yawi, and Nyunyu heritage. Now, welcome to you all. It's fantastic to have you here. And now we're going to get into the questions. So look, as you can see, to me, the word that I came up when I saw this was epic, right? I had such a sense of the participation of people of all ages across cultures on an incredible landscape that it really jumped for me from the screen. I wish I had been there to witness this incredible production. So I'm going to start with you, Meredith. And could you please tell us about this project, considering the absolute levels of participation, and why this project matters so much to community, and why did they get involved?
Thanks, Pilar. Yes, it's a big question. I think it's and there's lots of answers to that. I think, why did it matter? So the video that everyone has just seen is from the 2023 show, and the first production was in 2019. So I think in terms of going from one to the next, there's a living memory of how important that was for community members. Gemma was talking to me earlier about, why did you go again? And I think, in a small community, you see people a lot. You go to the post office and people say, oh, when are you going to do that thing again? That was amazing. And I think when people understood what it was coming from 2019, and you just say Shorebird Quest and people say, oh, yes, we can't wait. They had an understanding of what it was to go again. That takes you back to 2019 and, maybe why did it matter then, which is, another question. I think, the collaboration across different groups and the amount of participation and engagement that the project had was enormous and really important. And I think there's not that many ways that all diverse parts of community have an opportunity to connect. So, for example, to have Yawuru Rangers in classrooms working with kids, that alone is a special opportunity that we'd like to see more of. Multiply that by, all these different levels of engagement. There's community members invited to work with, nationally known artists and create puppets. Like, that's a special opportunity. People getting to work together in a community choir, people getting to hear, Yawuru language performed live, and people just getting to sit there on the beach, which is essentially a natural amphitheater, and look down at that stage. Like, these are really special things. So I think there's many reasons, and hopefully that's a good answer of a handful of them.
I think we're going to probe a little bit more in a minute, but just hold that thought. I think, to me, obviously the level of participation, people are invested in this in a way that it endured, right? So you did your show in 2019, and somehow people wanted it again, right? So this is what I'm hearing, that was the drive of the community, that you had to repeat it in some ways, right? And that level of investment to do it once obviously warrants the next one. But and if you have questions, please put them in the chat, and then Gemma will help me to filter so we can create a bit of a dialogue. So the next one, this is for you, Ed. And this place couldn't have probably happened anywhere else, right? It's very site specific. It's very connected to place. So could you tell us how and the engagement of Yawuru people, how did that commence? Why people decided to become involved, and what was your involvement more specifically in this project, Ed?
I mean, how we kind of became a part of it was all Theatre Kimberley coming towards NBY, talking with the Yawuru Rangers and the DBCA Yawuru Rangers on wanting to find out what kind of story we wanted to tell about Roebuck Plains and about country, and how that could be connected to the Shorebirds. And I mean, my part of it was, at the time, I was one of the Yawuru Rangers, and me alongside some of the other Rangers and other members of the Yawuru community got to be a part of the writing room and the storyboarding of how this story could go, and developing the character of initially Curtis, and how and what kind of story he was going to go on, and how he connects back to country.
Tell us who's Curtis, because most people wouldn't know. Who's Curtis?
Well, Curtis, Curtis the Curlew, but Curtis, the name came from a previous Yawuru Ranger who also went by the name of Curtis, who was at the time, very involved in a lot of the work that both Yawuru Ranger teams were doing. So he was a very big character.
One of the protagonists, one of the birds, right, on the story.
Yeah.
The main character.
Yeah.
Now, can you tell me a little bit about the lead up time to this? Obviously, community engagement takes time. You've got to develop trust, and relationships are absolutely core to this kind of projects for them to work. And could you tell me, what was the lead up time for this when you did it in 2019? How long did it take for people to actually really get excited about coming along for the journey?
Well, I'd say in regards to the community members and from NBY side at Yawuru, we definitely the Rangers were all, I think, on board from the get-go. We were a bit unsure about it in general, because it was the first time we'd been asked to be a part of something theatre-wise, and especially when your every day is just going out on country and doing environmental work, and just being brought up. You want to be a part of writing a story, being a part of a performance, and things like that. But the actual elders in our community and things like that, they're all born storytellers, and they immediately wanted to be a part of it, wanting to tell stories about the shorebirds.
Thanks, Ed. Now I'm going to go now to Bernie and Jamie, and I might just let you, pick who wants to go first. You two had really amazing roles in this in terms of the writing and the music creation, and we know that, as I was saying earlier, there's a lot of songs, a lot of music, and a lot of elements to this. So can you tell us a little bit more about the creative aspect of this project? We know we've got community engagement, we've got First Nations engagement, and the connection to conservation is obviously really strong here. So how did the process happen to decide to actually put some of these elements together in an epic kind of community performance? Can one of you speak to that? You want me to?
I mean,
okay. So I guess it started as a conversation between Jamie was sort of working at the Broome Bird Observatory. She spoke to myself and Gwen Knox about a theatre show with migratory shorebirds.
Well,
and that was sort of
I interject with that because I wanted to, it was actually Gwen's fault that it turned into a production, because I actually approached you, specifically Bernie, to look at the possibility of building a shorebird puppet so that we could put it in Shinju Matsuri Parade, so the Bird Observatory could have that something more in the community face. And
sure.
You and me and Gwen had coffee together, and then you were like, "This is great, yeah, we'll build a puppet." And Gwen's like, "Well, you're going to go through all the trouble of building puppets. You have to do a production."
Yeah, and so we came to that point, and then I think there was an idea of, so I run a project called the Big Country Puppets, and part of that project is working with Aboriginal Rangers, and they're talking about so we work together to write and produce and perform giant puppetry theatre shows on country. So we had this idea that we would sort of run this sort of process in a sort of similar way, and bring the rangers into that writing room, and invite them into that writing room to really be part of that project. But I mean, when that conversation first started, I think when Jamie first started talking about it with people, that was probably 2016. And so there was a 3-year lead up until the actual show itself, which was 2019. And so in that time, there was a lot of different people that were brought into that process. Karen Hethy was a really important theatre maker who was also brought into that process as well. And then obviously it took a long time also to get the funding. But in terms of the creative, those are the creative bones of the beginning of the project. And then from there, within the writing workshops with the Rangers, we also went through the process of looking at design, looking at what was needed for those puppets, what characters we needed, who were they. We went through sort of a process of talking with Rangers about what their experiences were with theatre, with musicals, trying to decide what the show, how it was going to speak to the audience, and what elements the Rangers wanted in there creatively as well. And then at the same time within that writing workshop, we started talking about, it was sort of at the same time talking about the musical elements. There's so many different forms that we were working with, trying to sort of bring them all in, and sort of looking at what languages we should use to express the different parts of the journey of these migratory shorebirds from Siberia to Broome. So that's, I guess, a very brief overview of the very beginnings of that creative process. Yeah.
Jamie, do you want to add to that? Because sorry, what I'm hearing here, and could you hold? There is a question burning in me right now about how do you sustain something for 3 years before you actually, get into production, because it takes a lot, not only for the creators, but also for the communities. And obviously, watching that 5 minutes video, what I see is that people not only came along for the long ride, but really invested in this in a way that is obvious. So maybe, Jamie, you can please talk about any of the creative aspect, but maybe if you can begin to give us a bit of an indication how you sustain that creativity during that process, and the energy and the community interest.
Yeah, that's a big question.
Please, and it'll be nice to share it. So maybe we'll go from you and we'll circle back again.
Yeah. So my husband and I took on the role at the Bird Observatory in 2015. It's a place that's been there for over 30 years now. And it's run on the smell of an oily rag, just like the arts. Conservation is very similar. And there wasn't a lot of training, and it wasn't my area of expertise. I'm a musician. So for me, I was digging through the shipping container, looking for, just connections and figuring out how the community worked. And I saw this photo album of Yawuru Bird Odyssey, which was Mimi McDonald's production done in, when was that then? Does anybody know?
In the 90s.
Yeah.
Because it traveled all over the world.
Yeah. And so that's where my brain went with the puppet and bringing that up to Bernie. My husband and I stayed in that role for 4 years. So for me, when we started talking about that puppets, that was the beginning. And Meredith, and I have to apologize, because for me, a lot of that time span is very blurry as well. 2016 was the pinnacle. I think my brain cancer stuff is in my bio. It's there because it impacted hugely on my time. That my memory through that time isn't totally solid. These people in the community with this tiny little idea, it had its own momentum. Broome's got not its own momentum, it was carried forward. There was a lot of work, but Broome's this place where it feels like when an idea sparks, it really takes hold and then just kind of explodes. So I think momentum from that is part of it, and just Somebody else want to speak to that?
Yeah, I was gonna ask Meredith to come and talk to that as well.
Yeah. I mean, look, for me, it's not dissimilar from some other big projects, and I guess if it's not your work, creating or coordinating or kind of trying to hold big projects is quite different from anything else. But I guess behind the scenes, it's like a lot of projects where you go behind the scenes, there's an enormous amount going on, and sometimes there's periods that are great intensity. Okay, we need to do some more development so we can put in for this grant, or that there's times of rest because of what any particular core member needs a break, or can't be involved. And so I guess one answer to the question is that for the wider community, it didn't live that long, the lead up. There's a lot of people who would have known nothing about it. And when I say a lot of people, I'm talking about school principals and leaders of choir and the kids who sang and the kids who made puppets and their families. But meanwhile, behind the scenes, for a small number of people, or relatively small number of people, there were things ticking away. And, like with funding applications, you put in and you wait and you try to have a meeting here and you try to work around everyone's schedules, and then you wait, and then, things go in bursts. So, I mean, yes, I think it is critical to note that it takes a lot of stamina, and it has a big impact on people's lives, and it's something that people really, at certain points, you're living with it regularly without anything outward to show. But when it came to the wider community knowing that was going on and you guys chime in, it was like Fast and Furious times, because that's when you go, right, communications out there, right, we're in that school, yeah, that's happening, you know, community, come to the shed and build, you know, and so it's a different experience depending where you are in it.
Yeah, I always say for when people ask about it that it was like 3 years of a slow incline of building relationships and getting funding and all of that, that mostly Meredith, that was you largely working on a lot of that. And I guess in Gwen and I doing some grant stuff too, but slow, steady incline. And then 3 months of just like straight up for creative once it got into the room of actually, you know, creating the work with the Rangers and then with Hayden and I and composing, it was just straight up. So
yeah, I would agree with that. There was a lot of us, including myself, that were all doing unpaid production work for those 3 years, also helping out writing the grants as well. And I guess like a lot of us are independent artists. We're not full-time employed by Theatre Kimberley. So myself, Jamie, Karen, we're not, you know, we were at that stage just giving our time sort of on the sides of all the other projects we were doing. I was doing my master's in writing at the time. There's a lot of other projects going on at the same time. So all of us are juggling, and even if you are a full-time, you know, employee of Theatre Kimberley, you're still juggling other projects within that, obviously. But yeah, it's definitely challenging to maintain a focus as well when you're sort of juggling lots of different projects.
Oh, absolutely, and that, I mean, and it is true that in a lot of the developmental phases, there is not necessarily the remuneration for the artist. So that's absolutely acknowledged. I wanna go to Ed. Ed, you mentioned something before about, of course, First Nations being storytellers, you know, and that's something in this production we see the blurring of the lines between what we'll traditionally talk about participants and audience, which I find that incredibly enriching. Just to, you know, and I've people mentioned the 90s. I think in the 90s we saw a few of these productions with the, you know, there was a bit of a burst of creativity, and these productions were happening in a number of places, including WA. But Ed, could you tell us a little bit about that experience of blurring the boundaries? Because maybe that's something very familiar in your community, in which people dance and participate in cultural ceremonies. So in a way, this, to me, the production itself is also feels like I wouldn't say necessarily a ritual, but certainly the people going through the level of participation is quite different from an audience perspective, that you're watching something rather than being embodied in being a participant. Could you tell us a little bit about how do you think that maybe was also a way for First Nations Yawuru people to want to participate, or the methodology itself? Yeah, maybe if you could tell us about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the show, the performance, and the way it was all set up, it was definitely a much larger scale than I guess anything I had, or probably a lot of us had worked with in the past. But that idea of, and was with a much wider audience, being able to speak out on issues that are happening on your country that also connect to other people's countries across the world, and but then bringing it back to being a personal story on Roebuck Plains as part of, and it being that significant as well. And I mean, we both kept it. It was the actual story and the plot of the story and things like that were all kept maybe a bit separate from how cultural stories would be told, but at the same time, it did have a great significance because we talked about Roebuck Plains and the live invertebrate on Roebuck Plains, the actual curlews using Roebuck Plains as their dining room, their kitchen, things like that. That's how we as Indigenous people are. That's where we get our food, out on Roebuck Plains, and the story was to show that we're just like them, that we need to take care of country, and because like the animals, that's where we get our food, and that's how we take care of ourselves, by taking care of country.
Yeah, thank you. That's great. I think that brings another element of this project, which is the complexities and the layers of belonging the layers of association to connection to specific country from a variety of people. And of course, we know that Broome is an incredible, diverse, multicultural place, very grounded in many First Nations cultures. Could you tell us a little bit about that idea of how this project converged and how the complexity that was happening in the relationships? I'm sure this project you can't do a project like this and be smooth sailing all the way. Those of us have been involved in community work, we know there's always bumps on the road. But the fact that you did it not only once but twice, it clearly points out that the if you like, any complexity was somewhat integrated, dealt with, it was spoken about, or somehow it worked, right? All this complexity was able to put to this incredible creative process. Anyone would like to talk a little bit about things from the creative aspect potentially, but also from the community aspect, like, for example, contestation of stories. You know, when you've got different groups telling different stories about same place, and how do you navigate that? Or roles and responsibilities when you've got, such a non-classic way of doing art. You know, usually you've got someone in charge and then everyone else maybe participates, but this is such a collaborative project. How did you navigate the little bumps along the road? And you feel free to speak to any of those that come to mind. I might throw it to Meredith. That was a long explanation for the question.
Yes, well, certainly to acknowledge that there were bumps. And I guess, I think a lot of where that stems from is the kind of Achilles heel of people who are passionate about their work, is the drive to make things really good. And I think in our team, we have a lot of people like that who want to make the best possible creative work across many aspects of it. So, across the puppetry, across the theatre making, across the music, everything. And I think, because no one, we're working with some, really experienced artists, and we're not telling people when to clock off. We say, we're working together and we're trying to get this done, and people give so much. And I think the Achilles heel is that people tend to work too hard. And when you're headed to a deadline, like the show is going up on May the 4th, and here's all the people we're taking with us. Yeah. And we are the leadership, as the leadership roles within Theatre Kimberley, the leadership roles within the artistic team, who people are looking after, who Jamie is looking after, who Bernie is looking after. There's a big burden for the work you're personally doing, and then what you're carrying. And so that's really hard. And I think, we're always looking for tools for ourselves and for our sort of communities of influence in okay, I'm working with these artists, so this is me speaking a bit as Theatre Kimberley, but also, as people making work like this with community in a regional area, what are the tools that help us better manage? And the fact is, you can, there's always more that can be done, and it's an enormous challenge. And I think it's, that results in people, becoming unwell, or people becoming just overly stressed out. And, that just has a big impact. And I think we've got to get better in our work at finding ways to make boundaries that protect the individuals so they can keep doing this. Not this as in burning out or exhausting themselves on any particular project, but having like the really positive influence. And I think the project went again in spite of challenges because of the importance to a broader group than us. And I think that's important.
That's beautifully expressed, Meredith. I think the comment about doing it again, there's obviously so much caring and so much invested in that people, despite all the challenges, they wanted to go again. What can you tell us a little bit about, before I go to the others? Do you have a sense of the number of people that were involved? I think we've got a sense through the video, but can you give us a bit of an estimate, just to get to have a sense of how many school kids were involved, how many people were in the choir and things like that?
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, I'm just recalling, Pilar, because we count so many things for our reporting. We go a bit crazy with it, but I believe we had nearly 600
Wow.
young people,
Wow.
school-age kids, including high school students, not as many high school students as primary.
Yeah.
And that would have been across making puppets, not necessarily all of them performed them, performers who weren't makers. A lot of them were both, in terms of small puppets within schools, also within the choir groups. Jamie might be able to tell you better, because I can't remember how many of those were singers. And she also had small ensembles who had special parts. Yeah, huge numbers. And I guess within Broome, those people that they influence were those family members who can then come on and have an appreciation because they've been hearing about it all along. That really crosses our community. We're talking about a town of 15 or 16,000 people.
Yeah, that's huge. Bernadette, I'd like to go to you and pick up this some of the challenges, because obviously as an independent artist, and you already alluded to that, having the insecurity of work and sort of juggling many projects, and while one is about to happen but it's not happening yet. And maybe if you tell us a little bit about that experience and how maybe some of your own ways of overcoming some of that.
Yeah, sure. I guess I was also just going to sort of lead in from one of Meredith's points about, she was talking about community in that first section. She was talking about how the community carries the project. And I think that there's a lot of community members who actually also carry a lot of the people that are leading the project. And so if it's not for them, then the project doesn't go ahead. So that includes people that are helping to house you, helping to feed you, people who are bringing food around, who are like, so many people from community put their energy into this project that it's just literally not possible to do it. And they're just coming in at the last minute, you'll be talking to a friend at the coffee shop, just going, oh my gosh, we've still got to get this thing done because blah 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 is sick or something's happened, and they'll be like, okay, right, I'm coming on this day, or I'll come late at night or something. Everyone's bringing so much energy to sort of support one another. So that project doesn't happen without them, firstly. And then I guess, just speaking to generally around independent artists, whether they're in a regional town, whether they're in a city. I do a lot of work in urban spaces as well. I guess one of the, it all comes down to housing for a lot of people. You'll hear this over and over again. For independent artists, housing is the number one problem that's happening. And because there is no artist wage that you would get, say, in Europe, say somewhere like Belgium, it means that you're always waiting for the next funding application. If you don't have somebody supporting you, like parents or a partner, you've got sort of a next level of insecurity as well. Or, if you're not living with family, then it's definitely a lot harder. And I guess the ways of overcoming that are, not everyone's able to overcome that. And we're seeing that more and more as the housing crisis develops further and further. And it's a huge danger to, I think, our creative communities, and to kind of fostering a really healthy ecology where there's lots of different artists that are able to function outside of organizational structures, perhaps.
Absolutely. I mean, I think wouldn't it be great? And I think maybe as a collective we need to be talking about this more, but the universal artist wage that Ireland, they've tried that, how important would that be? Maybe the next national cultural policy should be considering a universal artist wage, but we're going to pause on that.
Yes,
but I think it's very important. I think it is important to name it though, and it's something that other people in other parts of the world are looking for solutions. because of the value that they put into these creatives. So it is something that certainly I'm very interested in, and we'll keep, talking about those things when we can make representations to governments and politicians. So it's very important. Jamie and Ed, I haven't specifically to ask you if you wanted to speak to any of the harder aspects of or the maybe more challenges of a project like this, but if let me know if you would like to speak to that. Otherwise, I was going to start talking about outcomes given the time.
I feel like Bernadette and Meredith covered that very beautifully. There's always going to be challenges with big projects, and they spoke to them very eloquently and clearly.
Yeah, and I love Bernadette's comment about how the community carried you in so many ways. I mean, that is really speaks for the value of kind of this well knitted and kind of connecting creative projects. Ed, did you want to have anything to add to that?
I mean, as I think a lot of it was pretty much covered, I think, by Bernie and Meredith. My involvement our involvement with the Rangers probably came in within the last three months, as I said, with the more creative side of things. But just from that outside view of seeing how things came together in those last couple of months, seeing how the community did come together and how it was while the birds were being created and the puppets were getting made, it was the community members also practicing with the puppets at the same time, building them while they were learning, like people who had never been in puppets before were learning how to perform with them while the puppets were still halfway made. It was somewhat of a mad rush, but also a really enjoyable experience seeing.
Exhilarating.
Process went, yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can just imagine that. Yeah, the energy that would have been stirred up with this project. I want to now talk a little bit about a legacy and a couple of things. So we know the ones that, we work in the arts. We know how our work intersects around so many other fields. In this case, we've got environmental concerns and the arts coming together and speaking so beautifully about the importance of the environment for these particular birds, but also we know the World Health Organization has, reported clearly about the importance of arts and the value of the arts for health, and in particular to mental health. We know that we work across, with many other sectors with education. We know that musical education and kids learn better, etc., etc. We can go on, and yet I think somehow the way we talk about these things, we're not cutting through to make great investment in the arts. The investment that we have is still limited, and obviously as a peak body for the arts, we would love to see much more investment in regional arts. But so I think it'll be good to speak to the legacy and to speak of some of the outcomes that are very hard to pinpoint, and sometimes you can't quite see just watching another video. There is an artistic, obviously, legacy that is enormous, and all the skills and knowledge that those people would have developed participating. We know there is a knowledge about the ecology of the place that it would have come really obviously. I'd love to hear some of the kids talking about this project and the impact that would have had. So can we talk about that now, about that kind of the stuff that really it pulls your heartstrings in some ways, the narrative, the story, the beautiful things that happen when a project like this, and maybe the intimate moments. Jamie, I can hear you just thinking.
So that obvious. When you mentioned the kids and the impact for arts on education, I had 10 choirs for the last Shorebird Quest project. No, 9 of them, sorry, I beg your pardon. 9 were for the Shorebird Quest. The Big Sing, my casual choir, was an add-on just to keep me sane. But amongst those were the 5 primary schools. And getting to teach that material to these choirs every week, and having the all of the kids of a certain age in Broome now can tell you exactly what benthic means, and they can tell you why the birds like it. They'll say why the birds have to visit the mud. They'll say, well, they have to eat the benthic life. They benthic invertebrates. Broome kids know what benthic invertebrates are, and that's like, it's so gorgeous. Because, yeah, from an environmental standpoint, the key message for shorebird conservation is habitat conservation and mudflats and keeping them safe, and for a whole new generation of people to understand that that mud has something of value in it, not financial value necessarily, but of intrinsic value to these shorebirds. And as a mud, it's just so great. It's so great that they're all just, they can all tell you. It's like, why do the shorebirds visit Roebuck Bay? Said literally, I had a whole class of children saying, to eat the benthic life.
That's amazing. As you said, to imagine that you can actually influence in that positive way generation of young kids. I mean, what an incredible legacy that is. I mean, that you can't get that with anything else, I reckon, in my humble opinion. Anyone else, please? I mean, Bernadette, can you? Yes.
Just to add on to what Jamie just said, yes, absolutely, for younger generations. I heard so many stories from other people who came out of that show, the first one and the second one, that people who had absolutely no interest whatsoever in migratory shorebirds came away just so engaged in the story of Curtis the curlew and all the other endangered Eurasian curlews and birds that were part of that story, to understand their journey and to understand the significance of Roebuck Bay, and to understand the significance of the work that the rangers do in that country as well, because that's part of the story. It's actually written into the story. But to see all these tiny little things, because this is the key to it, I think, is one of the keys to it, is the key to seeing all these tiny little benthic invertebrates, and then also these quite small birds generally, or you're not always seeing them everywhere, to see them on large scale, to sort of understand them. That helped a lot of people to sort of draw them, and to anthropomorphize them and to give them voice. Yeah. I think that really helped to draw people into that story, and the real story. It's a real story. That's the thing. It's like, it's fictional, but it's actually happening every year, that migration. So I think that was really successful in terms of the impact.
Absolutely. Sorry, is it Jamie?
Yeah, I was gonna say, our Jael, who had gone to the bottle shop after the show, first show or second show, I can't remember now. Do you remember, Bernie, which one?
I think it was, I think actually Martin told me the story. He'd bumped into a guy, a tradie, who just was like, wow, look at those birds. So he just had no, he's fishing on the bay, but he's not out there doing benthic marine fauna surveys.
And and apparently just completely excited and just gobsmacked by the story that these birds have. It's it's really amazing to see people that wouldn't be engaged in that story at all, as Bernie is saying. It teaches into the puppetry element, especially brings into focus that things that they don't normally see. To see people that wouldn't go out of their way, they're not going to pick up a pair of binoculars and a scope and go on a bird watching tour or anything like that. For them to be excited, these little gray-brown birds out on the mudflat, and eastern curlews, they're critically endangered species. So having that attention is important. And that's really cool.
Indeed. Meredith, did you want to add to that? Another aspect of this that we haven't yet.
It's just two thoughts that came to me. So my father has spent his life studying benthic invertebrates. He's in freshwater, not saltwater. He's in the United States, not here. But I guess what it just made me think is that you can spend a long time sort of hearing about a thing and not really engaging or not really connecting it to what's around you. And I guess, in part, I just think of all the many ways that humans learn and take things in, and for different people, what are the pathways that get them maybe kind of to the same place, And I think the really rich thing about this project is there were so many pathways. So, you know, what Bernie said, I really liked about how kind of bringing it all together, you know, with, you know, the tiny little members of the benthos to the birds. I guess I just think all the way through music and the music learning and in the classroom and hearing, you know, the teaching artists are also talking about what's going on. The rangers are talking about what's going on. And I just think it's so rich that there are so many different pathways to the learning. And then, of course, ultimately the audience as well. You know, the music in 2019 was then professionally recorded. So that exists as professional recordings, not just sort of something that we were able to do on a, you know, on a gusty, you know, a breezy night on the show night. So I think that's really special. The other thing I thought of is you don't always know what impact something will have, and it's such a diversity of impacts on people.
Yeah.
And I actually was on the plane this week and sat next to a woman. I don't usually talk to people on planes. I'm kind of like, I'm just going to have my space. We're all real close to each other for a few hours.
Yeah.
But she saw some photos on my laptop and struck up a conversation. She was in the Bird Odyssey in Broome, whatever that was. So that's like probably 30 years ago, as a teenager. And she said, I never forgot it. And it's, you know, one of the things that stays with me, and I can put myself back in the place, being out there, you know, by the water, holding the puppet, operating the puppet. And I was just like, wow, you know, like, and so heading towards this conversation, I was just like, you just don't know where you'll reach people. And that's, I guess, one of those things that's not really, you can't quantify that. You can't put all this stuff in a report that just spits out the results. Therefore, the arts should get this many more millions of dollars, you know. So it's really, it's tricky, but it's also what makes it special.
Indeed, it's absolutely, you're so right. I think, thank you for that. That's very evocative as well. But before I say any more, I want to go to Ed. Ed, do you have any stories or anything that you heard from someone as far as some moments of legacy, that's something that meant something to people?
I mean, I think looking at it from the not to say the opposite end, but as we were part of the Rangers and thinking of the Ranger team that I was a part of at the time, and thinking back on last year's 2023 performance and things like that, hearing how or seeing how some of the Rangers I worked with, how they kind of began to realize that they could use the way theatre and puppetry and the performance were going to be used to tell the story of the significant things going on out in the country and what was environmentally important, and seeing particular members of the team that I was a part of, how they kind of came out of their shell during the storyboarding part of it to then being a part of the performances themselves as well. I'm thinking of one particular member of the team who was new to being a ranger, but he very much immediately got on board to the story and became one of the characters in the performance, and really started to build what that ranger was, and some of the other characters in the story, and just going away from that, and how he then brought that back to community and telling his family and things like that he was part of these things, and then this was the story he wanted to tell. I think that was one of the more interesting parts from our end, when we knew about the importance of the birds, but then seeing that there was more than just the very official presentations we were telling people of. These are important ways of how you should protect the country. The actual performances were such a good experience as well.
Thank you. Yes, there was something that Bernadette, you said about giving these birds a voice through the work that you did, and you made the people, I suppose, much more sensitive to their plight and the importance of looking after them. And I can imagine that how incredibly powerful that is. I mean, and that is what the arts does. We can tell stories, and I think this collective story is just so beautifully done and so powerful. Look, right on 1 o'clock, I can't believe our timing. This is the time for for you out there to ask any questions. And Jim, I haven't been checking the chat because I cannot multitask that much.
That's okay. I think we just
Uh,
a lot of thank yous, but no questions yet. So if you
Okay.
do have one, please type it in or put the little emoji
or-
hand up.
or unmute yourself and
Shout out.
and please ask the question. I think it will be a great opportunity. Or, you know, comments, questions. Other people we know that are very connected to this project too. You're very welcome to make comments. I'm not saying any names. I don't want to put you on the spot, but we've got people in the room who have been involved in really big projects. I'm not going to say the names. In other parts of the country, I know. So yeah, if there's anything that is in your mind, we'd love to. Don't be shy. We're in a really lovely bubble right now. Anyone? Barb.
Thank you. It's been great to revisit the project. I was talking with people from Yawuru Maya in Carnarvon this morning about this project and encouraging them to get onto this to listen about how you tell a story of place in such an evocative way.
Do you want to tell us who you are? I know you, but the rest of
Sure,
the
yes. I was with Country Arts WA back in its former iteration, network director, and I was in Broome at the time that the show was on in 2019.
Oh, so you saw it?
I did.
Oh,
yes.
Great. Thank you. That helped. Yeah, great.
And working with Jael. Hi, Jael. It's so, like, I was thinking as you were talking about kids in particular, like my son wouldn't have learned anything at school if it weren't for projects like this. Okay, it's just so valuable. And so I was talking with Yawuru Maya team members about checking this out because there's value for them and telling their stories in Carnarvon and the Gascoyne. And the fact that you did it again, like the amount of energy that went in the first time, I just can't imagine. Have been involved in projects. I don't know if I could do it a second time. Just amazing. I don't have a question. I'm just really acknowledging the amount of effort that goes in and the fact that you're still here talking about it so enthusiastically as well. Amazing. Thank you.
Thanks, Barb. That's a great comment. And Barb, many years ago, she was involved in a really big project in Kalgoorlie, Kambalda. That was a community sort of this scale, looking at the importance of water. And Barb, I'm going to ask you if you wouldn't mind just sharing something really special that happened. And I want you to tell it, but I hope that you know what I'm alluding to, what happened in that time.
Yeah, well, I may be talking about the same thing. This is what I remember. We were very conscious of ensuring that we spoke to the elders regularly, so that those initial conversations, but regularly checking in. And there was an elder in Coolgardie whose grandfather saw the first barrowman come through Coolgardie, so there was connections right back in time. And it was drought funding, so it was already dry, but it was very affected by drought. And we talked to children about what would happen if they didn't have access to water, and lots of the Aboriginal kids knew exactly where to find water in their environment. So those differences were very clear from the beginning. But we had the performance and it was amazing, and we'd had a lot of wind. It was in October, I think. There was a lot of wind leading up to it, but the night of the performance, it was absolutely still. And then the next morning, a big storm came through, and it only was over the top of Coolgardie, and the Nyamba hole got filled up with water. And everyone was very happy that, we'd basically done a rain dance or something the night before. to bring the
Thanks.
rain.
Mm.
Thank you. You
Was
knew
that what you were referring to?
Absolutely. That was what I was referring to. There was a time that I was leading the Community Arts Network and Barb was working with us. So thank you for that. That was a very powerful and sort of similar sort of scale, but another transformative instance. Can I go to anyone else, please?
There was a question, Pilar.
Yes, thank
But
you.
that was a magic story, actually. It just felt like magic. Some really lovely comments, but one question which is burning in my mind as well is, and I'll read it out. I'd love to know what might be next for Shorebird Quest and this creative collaboration. Do you see a particular show having an ongoing life? And I think that's a burning question for me as well, because you guys obviously have, you know, these puppets, you know, you've obviously, people are still talking about it. What's next for the Shorebird Quest?
Secret. It's a secret.
Well, I think I can be honest in saying we don't have all the answers. Also, I can say there's been some conversation about more, and including talks of the possibility of some of it visiting other coastal country. However, we're really aware that this is a story, you know, coming from and about, in terms of the content that has been developed, Yawuru Nagulagun, the Roebuck Bay area. So then it really needs to be carefully thought out about, not only in terms of scale, because like we've said, our community held this as well as all the, you know, important invested people who were, you know, artists and coordinating people and all that. So being careful about scale, but also being incredibly considerate of where it might go and whose stories are relevant to the places it might be. And so again, perhaps another collaborative project, depending on where it goes, you know, that's part of it. But yes, anyone else feel free to add, but there's I don't have any answers for you yet. I think it's something we're thinking about and looking into. Yeah.
Obviously, watch the space. I should have acknowledged that Theatre Kimberley was successful in obtaining core funds from the state government last year, and which begins this year. And I just wanted to take the opportunity to congratulate you for that achievement. It's a great recognition of the work that you've been doing for a long time, and that it's not easy to, if you like, to break through and get supported first time. So congratulations to you all. Obviously, that is really well deserving. Gemma, I saw a question coming up about the money.
Yeah, it has some context to it, so I'll just read that as well. A good logistical question. That's always nice, practical. It seems universal that volunteers give so much to the community performance projects, lifting up and supporting the core creative team. So incredible that it was remounted and that the creative team were interested and able to remount the project. I've worked on projects where there was community desire to remount shows, but no money or capacity of the original creative team to make it happen again. Also, where does the money come from to mount these works?
Who would like to take that question?
I can speak to it unless somebody else would like to. I think it comes from wherever you can find it.
Yeah.
So, you know, the funding that made the 2023 version happen was different from 2019. We had some NRM money, so funding on the side of conservation. We also have this incredible core team who knows a lot of things about a lot of different kind of funding. So, you know, we had the feelers that were fairly broad, which was fantastic. and different parts of that team going, hey, do you know this grant's coming up? Maybe we can get this amount for this. And then, you know, that could actually lead into the development part of this. And then, you know, because it's also, it's not just about the funding, but it's like, how do you think about it? How are you telling the story of how it's coming together? What are the steps, you know, you know, there were many sources. I mean, and this is all, of course, beyond the in-kind support, which was enormous. But it's always, I mean, for me and other big projects that I work on with Theatre Kimberley, like it's always, you know, you're always looking and you're always thinking, oh, what could this thing that's just been announced be useful for that's in our sphere? Or artists that we know who we know are going to do other good work, and we can just, you know, pass that on to them. It's really hard.
Yeah. And Larissa, I just want to be a bit more, specific. We got federal and state funding for both remounts. Some of it was through science and some of it was through arts funding and some of it was through essentially like community development funding. So really sort of broad scale. Yeah. I
have to, I cannot let this pass, obviously, to let you all know that Regional Arts WA does manage funds on behalf of the federal government, and also we've got the DLGFC, our state government body that provides funds, and Creative Australia as well, the federal body that provides funds. If you are there in this room and you're not sure, please get in touch with us. We can absolutely point you to where there are specific resources to support this kind of projects. But Meredith was you put it very well, that basically you have to be always on the lookout, and the co-funding is always really important for all projects. So it's a time-consuming effort, but obviously a lot of this does not happen without the resources. So I saw another question popping in.
Sure do. Yes, this one's from Michelle, although I am curious to know if you had a number for it, Meredith and Bernie. Just like, do you remember how many applications you had to write for each of the performances? Do you remember? Is it burning in your head?
There's some things you
the
just...
first one was 3. Yeah.
3, okay.
I think the first one was 3, but then Theatre Kimberley already had a little bit of funding that they threw into that pot as well.
Right, okay, because it's just the work to put into all those, I think everyone knows all those applications and then those acquittals when you have so many and different processes. So the next one is from Michelle. Do you have any advice for someone doing a project like this with their local community, and what is your number one takeaway looking back doing it the second time? Great question. Who wants to have that one?
Gosh.
Number one takeaway or advice?
Plan ahead. Plan well in advance. Give yourself a few years to start the process, or a couple of years, because if you want to do something really big, it takes time to find the team, to get to find the right people that want to come together, and then funding. You might be waiting 6 months, maybe longer, for the outcome of that funding, and then if you don't get that one, you have to apply for another one, etc. Just give yourself lots of time in the lead up to sort of consider the best paths and consider different pathways of doing it as well, and who needs to be involved. I think that's sort of like the first thing is like, I was like, look, we need to like speak to Yawuru people first. Like they need to be at the leading the so I think that's probably like the first things that I'd think of.
Yeah, the thing I think of that adds on to what Bernie's saying there is who needs to be involved. Also, who would love to be involved? Like, who has a stake in what you're trying to do? Because at the end of the day, when everyone's busy with their other job or their family or whatever else is going on, things get pushed forward because they're important to people, and people stick with things because they matter. And it's worth knowing who are the group of people to whom your project will matter.
Yeah, and making
it can take a while to
sure
find,
that
which
people
is
have access. Yeah, and making sure people have know they have access to be part of that team as well, because some people won't put themselves forward either. making sure people know they have access to sort of those opportunities, because not everyone always has access to the opportunities, and so they don't maybe have a track record of doing things in the past. I don't know, I think that's important as well, because like, as far as I know, pretty much all the Rangers, none of them had ever written a romantic comedy musical before. They did a really good job for their first time.
They didn't know they
Jane-
wanted to until it was over, some of them. And then they really wanted to.
Yeah.
Amy, Ed, would you like to add to that?
Ed, do you want to speak first?
Yeah, I mean, I guess from that community part of it, I think we were lucky that the Theatre Kimberley kind of came towards us, and that was what got my involvement, got what the Rangers' involvement in, and got what Yawuru's community involvement in. And I think, yeah, I'm not too sure if I could bring any advice of how someone else could do that in their own area, but the fact that, because from my perspective, it was done the right way, with just the way it was done through Theatre Kimberley, engaging with Yawuru, and then putting the feelers out to engaging with the schools, and then with the media groups inside of Broome as well, and just all those pieces coming together, and maybe from the outside looking in, it seemed to have worked perfectly.
Indeed. Jamie, did you want to add anything to that?
I would second what Bernadette said in terms of time. If you're trying to mount a big project, to do whatever amount of time you think you need, and then add a lot more to it. Like especially if you're working in with schools, I think for myself personally and for Hayden together, so the challenge for us was writing a musical score while delivering it in the primary schools at the same time. So teachers asking for material in advance and going, well, we'll be teaching them a song. I don't know what that song is yet, but I'm teaching them a song. So it was, yeah, more time, more preparation is definitely good. The second time around, it was so much smoother, because we weren't, the only thing that existed before the first production, before the crunch of the build, was Benthic Boogie and a little bit of the concrete theme. And, certainly not sheet music. It's certainly not a full score. And this time around, we had all of it from the production. We made some new pieces of music, but having that time to like prepare to teach something is definitely beneficial.
Sorry, earlier on I heard, obviously Broome is still a relatively small community in some ways, so the relationships were probably mostly formed, and that I imagine that would facilitate some of the connectivity in bigger places. Perhaps that's a little bit more challenging, but I would echo to what you just said. Trust is really important, and it's something that it takes a while to build, and it's quite fragile too. And Meredith, you said something about inviting people and who would like to come along, and also I'd like to suggest that maybe when you see who you're going to run and who wants to participate, and maybe ask the question, who is not here? Who in the community is not here yet that we really ought to be thinking about, that they should be also a part of this as well. So I think asking all of this pretty in a way fundamental questions about who is this for, and why are we doing it, and hearing the what is sustain you through the process. Maybe this is my last question, if no one else has got one, is especially when we're talking about the challenges, in some ways you're going to go, oh my god, and in the arts we do this again. I mean, it's like, really, it's like parenting, or women who had kids, they go, oh, I'm never going to do this again, and yet some women do it again. Why is it that we actually go there again and again? Can someone reveal the conundrum of we go there again? Why do we do it?
I think people wanted it. That was a big part. Everyone just kept asking us when we were going to do it again. And everyone still, like, they'll be like, oh, this is blah, blah, blah. They've been working on Shorebird Quest. It happens every year. And I'm like, no, it doesn't. What? Since when? But yeah, people want it. And also there's a thing that happens, like I noticed this, like after the show, the night that we've finished or whenever, and we've all gathered together and we're maybe like having a glass of wine or two, people keep coming up with ideas for the next show. So they're like, oh, and then the next one, we're going to do this thing, and then we're going to do that, and we didn't even do that, and oh my gosh, we didn't do that. There wasn't enough time to do this. So it's still just like bubbling with possibility. Just crazy possibility as well.
Thank you.
I think
Anyone else?
Yeah, I adding to what Bernie said, like I think you just can't, like, once you get the taste of it, it's a strange sort of addiction, creating things. And when you kind of get positive feedback from it, that spark can kind of like, bubble on, and you can't help it. It's don't want to. You forget all the stress, like you're saying, like having babies. I don't know what that's like, but like having babies and then going, I'll never doing it again, and then wanting to do it again because you romanticize maybe, and you saw all the positive things, and then you think, oh, all these things are possible, and wow, we could just go off on this tangent and then that tangent, and then we're going to tour the world, and then just nonstop.
Yep.
Yeah.
Meredith, did you want to add to that?
I haven't thought before about comparing it to, growing your own new human, but I think there's probably something in that. And yeah, I agree with everything that's been said. It's kind of like, I kind of remember an arts professor I had, and we were on an art tour, and he was talking about like the pain of things goes away, but when you have absolutely fantastic experiences, they will stay. And I remember that for the first time thinking about that in a life where, you seek pleasure and positive experiences, but yet, there's a lot of hard knocks in life, whether it's in your work or your study or your personal circumstances, and, just kind of considering what discomfort is worth doing. I think when you get an incredible amount of positive feedback, it's really hard to not say, okay, yeah, we could do that. Yeah, we could do it again. Yeah, sure. You asked. I better, we better step it up. It's interesting.
Ed.
Yeah, it's like the.
Oh, sorry, I was gonna go to Ed. We've got just a few minutes. I'll go back to.
Yeah, no, Ed.
Did you want to add
okay.
anything to that?
I mean, probably say a lot of what everyone else said, but yeah, it's that reactionary feeling of all that positivity that comes back from the community, of not just your own community, but also hearing other communities. I mean, I don't know how many other ranger teams or Kimberley communities talking about how they wanted to have their own puppet performances that they could put on and things like that, and how they can get it done, and where those possibilities could come from, and I think just you just from the community perspective, just seeing like my nieces and nephews, just how much they love the shows and things like that. You just get that all that feeling of wanting to tell those stories for the sake of the community, and you just keep want to do it again and again, because it's all that positive energy getting sent to you.
Thank you. Bernadette, do you want to add one more thing? You're burning to say.
Yeah. So many things. Actually, Ed, I just had to mention that you've gotten 2 tattoos now since each show. One of a Eastern curlew flying in front of the moon. and a puppet version of the Kelly. Anyway, if that says a lot, I think. But yeah, I was in Brazil for 6 months working on some artist residencies, and I showed the photos of the Shorebird Quest to people there. And so they were like, we need to do, like, we want to do our one, you know, not about shorebirds, but we want to do this like site-specific show on the beach about whales and endangered species here. I was like, oh my gosh, you don't know what you're signing up for. But yeah, it's like it's a pandemic of ideas. It's addictive, yeah. It's catching.
That's great. I'm just going to go back to Gemma. Gemma, do we have any other questions, comments?
Yeah, there's a few comments in there, but no other questions.
Do you want to read some of the comments?
Yeah, I'll just see. The last one was from Silvano, and he makes the point, if it's a shame that there's not investment to grow it over 5 years to remount, but also to add and see what happens when you have 5 years of an annual show in the community.
I'm going to start bringing this to a close, and I wanted to say that my theory why we keep going, I think creativity as a force, as an energy, it just needs to continue to grow and perpetuate somehow. And I think those of you, and you know this well, because this little bubble right now is full of creatives, and you know how compelling it is to say something, to write something, to create, to sing, and I think, isn't it, that's just a gift. And I think that's a gift that this sector, we've got to, you know, that's why we keep doing it, right? So, and that's why maybe we endure more than we should sometimes, because it's so powerful, that the creative force, incredibly powerful. But I believe that we, I've been around for a long time, you know, in terms of, you know, my career in the arts, and I do feel that there is a different appetite to understand the power of the stories and the narrative. So I am forever hopeful that there will continue to be investment, because people value what you all do. And certainly, as an organisation, we absolutely do. And it's such a pleasure to create an opportunity for this conversation to be had. And we need to have more of them, because I don't know about you, but I'm feeling very energized, inspired, and a bit excited that, you know, we need to be talking about this a lot more. We need opportunities to come together and kind of celebrate each other's work, and I would like to exactly do that. And thank you to Jamie, Meredith, Bernadette and Ed, and others that were there. I know Jael and Gwen Knox. And sorry, I'm not sure if anyone is on. Gemma, I would like to thank you too for putting this on, and wishing you all very well. And unless anyone has got a final words that you would like to add, I would just like to say thank you so much, and we will meet again, no doubt. Gemma, would you like to say anything else?
And thanks to you, Pilar. That was really beautiful facilitation and a great conversation. I have had some people in the audience who I've never engaged with before, so I just wanted to say that it'd be great if you wanted to be a Regional Arts WA member. It's free. And just that power in numbers. So I'll put the link in the chat. And I think that's really it. Thank you for everyone for coming. Thank you. And, you know, leaving with the words of, you know, we started with, which was expansive, airborne, collaboration, connecting, and epic. And I think you guys have really added to that today. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody for coming.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.